Hey, it's nighttime. We're live. I'm early at 6:39. That's all good. It's always better to start early. So tonight we want to talk about. I got actually a good question in the comments. Might have been an email. Lots of different ways to get questions and comments, but the gist of the thing was, hey, if I have a combination, in this case, I think he had an LSA supercharged LS, so it had the LSA blower on it. He said, if I'm running a combination that makes, let's say, 500 horsepower, you could pick 500 wheel horsepower, let's say 500 wheel horsepower, and I'm running 8 pounds of boost. Okay, good. I got some information there. So we're running 500 wheel horsepower. I'm running 8 pounds of boost. If I make 600 horsepower at 8 pounds of boost, so we're going to change the camshaft and ported heads so we make more power, but at the same boost level, which one of those is going to be more likely to detonate with pump gas? So 93, 94 octane. I think he was saying 94, which seemed odd to me, but because usually it's 91 or 93, maybe there's 94 in various places. So his question was, which one of those would be more likely to detonate? Will they be? He was wondering if they would be the same, since they both have 8 pounds. And the short answer to that is no. I don't think that they will be the same, and for a number of reasons, which we're going to go over. And it would be nice if the world were that simple, but it's just simply not. The performance world, none of the world is. The political world, every world that we're involved in is not that simple, but certainly the performance world is. And in this particular case, we want there to be this kind of simple black and white answer. So the black and white answer or the pathway down this, his thinking is that, okay, I have 8 pounds of boost. It's this water temp or it's this air temperature at 8 pounds of boost. And in this case, he has an intercooler too, which is an important thing for us to bring up because it changes the dynamic. And in ways that would make it more or less likely to detonate. So we have an intercooler, we have 8 pounds of boost, which we assume is going to be a fairly low temperature going into the motor, because at only 8 pounds, you're not raising it that much, even though this is a positive displacement blower, which is low on the efficiency list in terms of efficiency and charge temperature. So we got a hotter temperature coming out of that kind of blower compared to others, or compared to a turbo. We're going through an intercooler that cools things down. We should be looking good, even on pump gas. So we will assume that this wasn't mentioned in the discussion that we were having in the comment, but we will assume the same air fuel and the same timing for both of them. So let's look at things that would affect this. First of all, the first thing I would look at is the very beginning of this thing. And then for me, the very beginning is, do we have cold air going into this thing? And that's one thing that I always stress in all these combinations, turbocharged, supercharged, whatever it is, start with cold air. So get your air source into the blower, into the throttle body, into the air inlet system, into the mass air meter, whatever you have. Get it from the fender well or somewhere in front of the radiator, somewhere outside, somewhere not just under the hood. Don't start with a cone filter ever with anything. Just don't start with an underhood open element filter on anything. That's a bad idea. Get cold air, get a dedicated cold air source. So let's assume we're getting ambient air. It's going into the blower. The blower's making 8 pounds of boost because of how fast it's spinning relative to the NA power output. Because it's important to understand that boost isn't anything other than a measurement of the restriction caused by that combination of blower speed and blower size, and then whatever the NA power output is. So those three things kind of combine. You can also have restrictions in the exhaust and other things, but those things are primarily the deciding factor for what's going to happen with the boost level. So you're going to have this much boost produced by this combination of things. And that's going to produce some given horsepower, again, depending on what the motor was and then what the blower is and all that. So in one combination, we have the blower, we have this motor combination, which was an LS, and then it has some sort of stockish head and stockish camshaft or mild camshaft or whatever it is that makes 500. We'll say it makes 500 at the tire with this blower spinning this certain speed. And we have 8 pounds of boost and we have intercooled. Hopefully we have cold air going into it. And so we can get away with, a reasonable amount of timing at that boost level with that octane. So we got a good combination, making 500 at the tires. So now we have some detonation threshold. Okay, the combination of boost and temperature and the octane and all these things are going to combine together to give us some detonation threshold. And the important thing here is that the boost level and then the attending temperature based off of that boost, the temperature increase and then the decrease with the intercooler is going to produce, is one of the things that can produce some sort of detonation threshold. So, okay, now we go to our new combination. The new combination, excuse me, it makes more power, and it makes more power because of two things that we've done to it. So we're going to say a ported head. Maybe we had cathedral port heads on there, and then we put trick flow heads on there, airflow research heads on there, something good that's going to improve the flow rate and improve the power output. And then we put some other kind of camshaft on there that's also going to change the power output. So we've added basically 100 more horsepower at the same boost level. So in order to achieve that, not only do we have to improve the power output of the NA motor, but we also are probably going to, if we do that, if we change the cam timing and the cylinder head, we're also going to have to spin the blower faster. Because what's going to happen is if we just do the improve the efficiency of the motor, the boost is going to come down. The power is going to go up and the boost is going to come down. But if we are to achieve this theoretical thing where we're making 600 horsepower at the same 8 pounds, in order to do that, the naturally aspirated motor is going to have to be more efficient, and we're going to have to spin the blower faster to achieve that 8 pounds. So we're spinning the blower faster. We got a more effective naturally aspirated motor that flows more, makes more power because of the camshaft, because of the head flow. And then we have the blower we're spinning faster now it can support the amount of airflow that's required to make 600 wheel horsepower. So, but we're doing it at the same boost level. So right off the bat, here's a couple things that we know, or that we think, that we know. One is that we have the same temperature going into the motor. We have the same intercooler. We have the same temperature coming out. So the detonation threshold should be exactly the same, right? No, it's not. And here's why. One of the things to think about is we still have our cold air. We're spinning the blower faster. We're making the same amount of pressure, but we've changed the volume. So we're flowing more air through the core. So now the question is, we have the same boost level, but is the intercooler, first question we have is the intercooler able to achieve the same amount of coolant, it's the same sort of heat transfer and the change in temperature with this new flow rate? Is the core big enough, basically? Are we lacking in core size? So when we were flowing the amount of air that it took to make 500 horsepower at 8 pounds, we were able to cool it down to whatever we cooled it to. Are we still cooling it? Like, is the exit temperature after the intercooler with this new 600 horsepower flow rate, is that still the same? So we don't know that. We don't know that question. That's one of the questions I would ask. The other thing to consider is we are now also making more power. So the reason that we're doing that, even though the boost is the same, something else had to change, and that's the cylinder pressure. So we have more cylinder pressure. We might have the same amount of boost in the intake manifold, which is where we're measuring it. But we have the other things are the same. So we're assuming with our cylinder heads that the static compression stays the same, but with our camshaft change and our faster blower speed and our more power, one thing that's definitely different is our dynamic compression is now different. So the question becomes, did we make the combination more or less susceptible to detonation by doing this? We have more cylinder pressure, which would tend to push it towards more detonation, more problematic detonation with higher cylinder pressure. But did our camshaft help take some of that away? Is our camshaft combination now less susceptible to detonation? Did it make it more detonation resistant, or did it do the opposite? Like, we're measuring the temperature in the blower theoretically on the other side of the intercooler, so we could get the cooler charge. We're measuring that. Did it have a hotter air temperature going in because we were spinning the blower faster, even though the boost is the same? But where we're not measuring it, actually right by the valve or in the combustion chamber. So my question is, with this camshaft that we put in, whatever it is that helped us make 600 horsepower at 8 pounds, do we have any reversion? Do we have hotter combustion gases going back up into the inlet, changing the temperature of the air going in, during this, during the overlap period when this could happen. Is that even a thing? And is it happening? And so do we see, maybe we are making a lot more power, but are we doing it at the expense of greater detonation potential? Do we have hot exhaust coming in during overlap because we have got so much overlap in our camshaft? Is any of that stuff happening? Basically what we're, and the other thing to think about here is, let's say that we didn't change the static compression so that the combustion chamber was the same size, but is the combustion chamber a different design on whatever this head? Maybe we just ported the stock head, so none of that changed, and that's fine. We could do it that way. But if we change the head, do we make is the head, the new head that we put on there, let's say we put an airflow research head on there, trick flow head, whatever it is, we put something like that on there, is that chamber design more or less susceptible to detonation? One thing that we know, if we soften the chamber and put that head on, that's not going to be an issue. In fact, we would improve our situation even though we have higher cylinder pressure. And that's the final thing that I want to talk about, is we have more cylinder pressure because we're making more power. We have to. Those two things go together. So we have more cylinder pressure. We have more average power production. Does that part of it make it more prone to detonation? So we have more cylinder pressure. Is that going to create more problems in the combustion process that might lead to detonation? All of these things would be things that you would have to look at. And I would say, off the top of my head, that if we have one at 8 pounds making 600 and we have one at 8 pounds making 500, that I would think that you would have more problems with more potential for detonation with the higher power output, despite the fact that we have a shared boost level, for all the reasons that we just discussed. I think that that's only one small, the boost pressure that we're measuring and the attending temperature that goes along with that. I think that that's only one thing. And I also think that because we're cooling it, if we got similar cooling, that's almost not really going to be an issue. Just the temperature part of it. If we were to go way up in boost, I'd say, yeah, that's going to be more of a problem. But the other things are the things that I would look at. Have we changed the water temperature? Have we changed like the head design, like we talked about? Is one chamber more susceptible to detonation? Certainly, the higher cylinder pressure, I think, is going to. So let me know what you guys think in the comments, and let me know which one of those that you think would be, more. In fact, that could be our poll, I guess. Okay, would a 600 horsepower supercharged combo be more likely to detonate than a 500 horsepower? I don't really like that. Okay, here, this will work. Would a 600 horsepower supercharged combo be more likely to detonate than a 500 horsepower combo, both with the same boost? So is the higher horsepower one going to be the detonation monster? There. David, happy birthday. Sykes, Eric, Jordan. Perfect. Just replaced the melted piston in my 6-liter yesterday, only to discover that I also took out the turbo when I melted the piston. Oh, did it send stuff through the hot side? I've done that before when I was running a Honda on the dyno over at Verbanzix, over at the carb shop. I did some dyno testing there with my B series. And I didn't do it. I actually didn't do it with a piston, which was nice because I didn't hurt the motor, but we did hurt the turbo. And what it was on my flange for the turbo, the gasket that I had one of those like steel shim gaskets for the turbo, and the steel shim gasket overhung the opening for either it was for the turbo and for the T4 flange that we had for our exhaust manifold. So the exhaust gasket overhung that a little bit. So what it did was, while we were doing all this testing, the hot exhaust gases just just chewed the edges of that steel gasket off and sent all that molten hot lava into the exhaust side and just clipped the wheel for me. We kept making runs. I'm like, this thing is getting like not very responsive. I mean, it would eventually seemed like it would eventually make boost and make pretty good power, but it just started getting softer and softer. I'm like, what the heck is going on? I'm going to look at the turbo. I took a turbo off and I'm like, oh, look at that. All the wheel has been clipped and not evenly at all. So, you know, that stuff happens. 94 is a Sunoco thing. Yep. 8 pounds of boost. That's what we have in New Zealand. Do they also have that in England as well? Springfield's in the house. If I had $1 for every 8 pounds of boost. The lower horsepower has more low-speed cylinder pressure, and torque more detonation sensitive. Why would the lower horsepower one have more low-speed cylinder pressure? I don't understand why. If the other one makes more power everywhere, why would that happen? There. Liquid nitrogen. Yeah, that would be good. I don't know that you would want to inject that, but you could use it for the intercooler though. More overlap and later intake closing point helps stave off detonation. You think overlap does that? What if the overlap makes more low speed power? Is that still the case? What if it makes more low speed power and more mid-range torque and more horsepower and has overlap? Have you tested softened combustion chambers on LS boosted one? I haven't. Brian and I have been talking about doing it for years because they've done it on some of their drag race cars. But the test that I've wanted to do is on a street kind of deal at regular temperatures and everything. I've kind of wanted to do it on the chassis dyno more than on the engine dyno. BNR. So you're going political on this deal? So you're thinking that there's going to be another January 6th insurrection? I don't think it sent anything through the turbo. Oh, on your deal? Yeah. Too many unstable variables. Cheap $260 turbo, I think I found was the limit. You can damage them from over speeding, and they can go out and end up like they can trim themselves against the housing. That's never a good thing. I have had that happen before. Same boost, same static compression, but breathing better because of heads and cam. According to the stream update, I'm going to say no. Air to air versus air to water. I have the video up on that. Streetcar turbo mild, stock bottom end. I've heard there's a chemical mix for the air to water circuit to get lower than ambient without ice, not a solvent. Salt water will help do that, but it's corrosive to the whole element though. You can use dry ice and acetone, but it's not recommended. What is more likely to detonate an engine with less compression and more stroke, or higher compression and less stroke? I don't know. You'd have to. Those are not absolutes. There's not an absolute answer to your question. You'd have to ask specifically about what stroke change you wanted versus what compression that you wanted. Gasoline will quit clean combustion around -50 to -100. Fuel must have re-vapor. Larry Windmeyer's soft head, valve lift, and timing should be dictated by the shape of the piston dome you want rather than vice versa. And his motors use very conservative cam profiles. Here's what I've learned as far as boosts. What timing it likes NA is the same timing boosted. If you have to back down timing, you're using the wrong fuel. So you should run NA timing on your boosted combination. I don't know of anybody that does that. Changing the port design and velocity of his heads, they will flow 95% as much at 450 lift as at 800 lift. He also uses his own supercritical area rule. Air heat, but it is the lower compression reason for lower point, and is that less detonation prone than higher heat. Also, you've mentioned plenty of times about higher RPM cams having less dynamic compression. Yeah, cam timing can affect dynamic compression. But here's the thing, even though you've changed dynamic compression, you can add power with less dynamic compression. My S475 machining itself to an, to an S488. Yeah. If you could get it to do it like just right. Like if you had, like, let's say you were at the hot side limit of the turbo and then it clearance itself, and then you don't have to worry about that anymore, right? You just clip the wheel and you're good. Compression is relative to the stroke, so higher compression ratio is always going to detonate earlier. Stephen Morris told you that a turbo motor should have the same timing as an NA motor. Mark Wolf. Haven't seen any videos testing softened chambers at low and moderate boost levels. I know I want to do it. The situation that I want to create is not something that's like what they were doing when Brian was doing it, when they were running some specific class with was limited with the turbo size that they were doing. So whatever drag racing class that was, they were trying to get more effective power by making the motor more efficient, and timing was one way that they were doing that, and they were doing that by softening the chambers. But what I want to do, what I think would be useful, is to allow you to run on pump gas, to allow you to run the timing that's going to make really good power on pump gas by getting rid of, changing the detonation threshold of the combination, and on 91 octane or 93 or 94, allowing you to run the kind of timing that you would if you had 100 octane, let's say. Because we know when we run, when we were looking at the combination earlier today on the first live feed, we saw that when we ran on the NA combination, we ran 36 degrees, and then we dropped that down to 11 degrees. Now, you'd never go down that low, but there was like 150 horsepower difference from changing that timing. So we know that as we go down in timing and make the NA motor less efficient, which we have to do when we're running boost, when we do that, and we have to add boost then to overcompensate for our lack of timing. If we could run, like I said, race gas or E85 levels of timing on pump gas because we've softened the chambers, I don't know if that's possible because I haven't tested that yet. But if we could do that, if we could run another 3 or 4 degrees of timing because of this change in the detonation threshold from softening the chamber, imagine how much more power that would make. Because 4 degrees going from 20 degrees to 24 is probably not going to be a lot. But 4 degrees going from 16 to 20 is going to be a lot. And going from 11 to 15 would be a lot. And so if we could do that, then I think that would be something that the average street guy would want. And that's what my channel is about. And also, there's a bajillion of those guys, and there's this many racers doing that to try to, that's obviously an exaggeration, but there's that many racers doing it to try to achieve something that they're trying to achieve in whatever class that they're in, whatever their combination is. But if you could achieve that, there's how many people are out there trying to run pump gas with boost? Like we all are. I mean, I get guys that say, I want to run boost on 87. Well, you could, but should you? And are you gonna have to take away all the timing to run 87? But if you could soften the chamber and get 4 degrees from it, if that was the trade-off, and it was 20, 30, 50 horsepower, whatever that was with the 4 degrees of timing, that would be a good thing. I think people would be willing to pay to have that done, particularly if a guy, like we pay to have heads ported. If somebody also did a chamber softening deal that was part of that, and it was a reasonable cost, I think guys would go for that. What are the things you would check on the short block if you're putting a 385 crank in a small block Ford, budget rebuild, hopefully no machine work? You're putting that in a 302 Ford or in a 351? 358 stroke, flat top piston, 10.25 compression versus 4-inch stroke. Dish piston, 9.5 to 1 compression. So are those the ending compressions with that change in stroke? Then my question would be that there's not going to be an answer to that, because I know that you want a compression versus, this one has this much stroke, this one's got more motor, whatever. But the other thing that comes into play there is like our combustion chambers, the piston design also is going to change the detonation threshold. If it's a flat top piston, it actually might be less susceptible to detonation than a dish piston would. If you got a dish with a quench, that's probably better. But again, you've thrown another variable in there that has nothing to do with the change in stroke. Steve Morris said that recently about NA and boosted. You watched the episode. I think that's great. I disagree with that. I disagree that you'd think that a higher cylinder pressure would need the same timing. Why should you should do a build by number motor using proven formulas to calculate runner size, exhaust tube, and length? I don't know what you mean by formulas. I don't see how clipping a turbine wheel is going to help, because the wastegate is just going to close harder and the turbo still needs the same energy to drive the compressor. You don't see how clipping the turbine wheel would change the back pressure? Cleater's running a Proline motor on methanol, running deep into the 5s. I saw that. He's out doing good stuff. What Steve Morris does on race motors is not what people should be doing on junkyard LS motors. Those are not the same things. And if you could run all of the timing and you think that it needs the same amount of timing because of octane, again, I don't agree with that. I don't agree that under boost that you wouldn't change the flame travel, and you wouldn't change the timing that would be necessary for that. And even I'm not going to argue with Steve about 2 or 3 or 4 or 5,000 horsepower drag race motors, because that's not what I do. But there's no way that you would do that on any of the things that you'd get from a wrecking yard. I know when I was racing my van on nitrous, 91 pump gas, 250 shot, total timing is 28, but 117 Q16. I could run 35 degrees of timing. Did it do anything? Because I've run lots of nitrous stuff and it became insensitive to timing when we were running like 300 shots. $51 plus 3850 scat lightweight, 9,000 crank. I don't remember if we've run 3850s. Maybe we did. Maybe that's what the 383s or 392s or something were. I think that's where we all were in 1990 with newer EFI engines, trying to figure out how to stop your 5-liter supercharged equipped 3.8 from detonating. Where is where we were? I'm here primarily. Where am I at here? I'm kind of scrolling back. I'm here primarily because Richard did to his 1,000 horsepower 351 turbo engine. So you're just all diehard for it all the time. Tony recently hurt a 4.3 running too much timing on boost. I agree with the junkyard LS. Agree to disagree. I don't know what you're disagreeing with. There's no way to disagree with running too much timing out of junkyard LS. That's not a thing. That's not an opinion. Say making 1,000 horsepower just for explosions winning a race. Well, and that would be like, and you saw what I did with that motor too. That was all me. That was me being dumb. That's me trying to control the boost with the throttle, and you should never do that. Crowline Big Bang. Yeah, I think Steve probably has already done that, right? It's weird that double a cylinder doesn't detonate the way double the compression ratio would. Double the cylinder pressure? Are you doubling the peak cylinder pressure, or are you doubling the average cylinder pressure? Trying to avoid running high octane gas. Yeah, the vast majority of people, especially turbo LS guys, are those guys who want to run it on 87 or in California 91, but certainly 93. So none of them are going to be anywhere near how much timing they should be running, even just on E85, let alone what you then do when you have to run methanol or something. You boost an engine, you need different ignition lead because of a charge. So you mean you need a different timing curve. We're stuck with 91 or 93. I think most of the country is like that. I don't think even E85 is universally available everywhere. Oh, but Dean, you like the other guy's stuff? Yeah, you should. There's lots of good stuff. 2 times the cylinder pressure versus 2 times the compression. Well, again, Bill, my question would be, because if you look at a cylinder pressure trace, are you talking about the spike where the highest peak cylinder pressure is? Or are you talking about doubling that? Because you could double that and then not have much going on elsewhere, or are you just doubling the average amount? Because when you're doubling the average amount, the peak cylinder pressure change is really not that great. This is real world stuff. I love to hear from everyone. Yeah, because a lot of times with boosted applications, you have more average cylinder pressure. So you're not just taking the same cylinder pressure trace and like making it double it. You're making more here and also more here, if that makes sense. You say you're being dumb. It was me being dumb. But you're right. I do need to do the 351 Windsor thing again, because I think it will go beyond where it went to. I don't think that was my best foot forward. Todd, you're putting your engine back together? Might be getting a 3800 to mess with. I'd also end up talking my way out of it, fixing if it's all right, just needing a coil pack, ignition control module. I think it's a 2007 Grand Prix. I wish I still had some of the factory ones. I would just send you one if I had one. I don't know if next time I'm down at Westech, I can look and see if I have any of the factory ones, because we don't use any of that stuff. When we're running the 3800, we put LS coil packs on it. Flux capacitor can take all the timing. Does a flux capacitor even need timing? Because I remember reading Dr. Jacobs, and he said that if you could have microwave ignition that happens instantaneously, that it would ignite the whole, all of the available air and fuel like simultaneously. Then you don't need to have any ignition timing. You don't need to have any, any pre-timing. Speaking of cylinder pressure, I wonder how much was in the Honda engine that exploded. Do you see that thing with the crank hanging? Yeah, from the Boosted Boys deal. Thing to try to prove is if a guy can precisely soften all 8 combustion chambers at home with a die grinder. I think I'd want to see it done correctly first, and then see if we could duplicate that maybe on a shoestring budget. If you really want to figure out the timing for a given motor or fuel, you would do a spark hook test. I think we can do that on the dyno, and the dyno will tell us what the motor wants. Because when we start adding timing, we do that until it stops making power, and that's when the thing stops wanting timing. The power output is a telltale sign. Still need to revisit the 6-liter Big Bang. Yeah, I don't know how much more is left in there. I don't think as much is left in that as is left in the 351, but there's some there. With a flux capacitor, we could just go back in time and then tell it to fire, right? Boosted Boys Honda might be, that was a pretty catastrophic failure. Changes your timing, pulleys, octane, fuel temp, air density, all will affect how it runs and how much advance or retard the timing to optimize the combustion. Supposedly the customer already has a new engine on the way, bought it from somebody who told them that's what it needs. It's pretty darn good for only running on 4 cylinders. That would be nice. Like, fingers crossed, Mark. Hopefully it's all good and wants to run. For the audience here, if you're doing bridge maintenance, a soda blaster will smooth the surface without taking out the cement. Oh, that's good. Bought a cheap 2011 Camaro. Normally I wouldn't touch it, but I'm curious about the LLT 3.6-liter V6. There's 11-in-1 compression, but I found the T4 twin turbo kit. How much is too much? I don't know. What kind of octane do you use? Did I miss to talk about the Weingauer cam test? Yeah, that was a lot of live feeds ago. But he talks about it, so you can go to his channel, and there's lots of videos on it. Eric did a good job. Converting an LQ9 to a 408, do you have to notch the cylinder walls for rods crank to spin, or do they not hit? You might at the bottom. Softened combustion chambers are a fairly recent innovation for nitrous oxide and boost. About 2020, I saw it for the first time. I think that the Pro Stock guys were using it. And I know Brian and I were talking about it before 2020 because it was before COVID. Larry Windmer is Larry the old guy? Is that who that is? Is he? Did he do the not Endine cams, but something like that, right? Softening the chambers long ago. However, he was promoting disabling the big cam profile on the supercharged VTEC Hondas because it made more boost. It definitely would make more boost, right? Just not more power. I went through a little bit of that with some of the big guys in the Honda world, where they're like, yeah, you can't run VTEC motors. Like, why can't you run VTEC motors? You got to do the non-VTEC ones. No, you don't. Try it. Oh, it won't work. No, just try it. Just stop. You mean you have a turbo kit that already bolts on there. Just try it, and it will be amazing. New 408 is in the van. Now I just have to install the brackets and intake manifold. Hopefully Saturday I'll be doing the camshaft break-in and get ready to do the 500 miles before racing it. Is that carbureted on the 408? There was doing it with Endine. Okay, that's what I thought. I think that the guys that I sold my Civic to, and also the Del Sol that were doing it at Bonneville, I think the K series motor that they swapped into the Del Sol, they had stuff that Larry did because they had a K series in it. And I think that they had him do the cylinder heads, the ported head, and then I think also the cams. I think it'll hit 2,000 horsepower before it goes. Are you talking about the 6-liter? I would be surprised if it got that far after seeing what the L8T did, but maybe. I wish you'd do a boosted 390 FE for RPM and horsepower. I would like to run an FE, not a big bang one, but just anything. But with him, it was knock sensor, strain gauge, and removing boost, not just soft head management. So if a spark plug can be replaced with a microwave ignition system, so it can be used in any engine. I've seen people use smaller valves so they would sit deeper in the seat. To try to lower the static compression, is that what they were trying to do? Hold on, Ralph. I'm going to see what the and all that was about. I was seeing that there was something else that came before this. Something that I missed. I don't want to miss stuff. Works the same. Seeing horsepower drop off. Spark hook is not used that often, but it's very accurate. Time consuming. Nice to do on a load holding dyno. We can do stationary loads too, but like I said, if you even on a whether you do it as a stationary thing, you can load it at 1 RPM if you want to do that, or if you're doing it as because not very often are you ever running in a stationary load situation, you know, in the real world, except at Bonneville, where you might be running up against an aerodynamic wall where you'd be running it like that. Sometimes the boats are doing that, although they're, you know, if they're jumping them out and stuff, they're on and off the throttle, but sometimes they're on the throttle for a long period of time. I have an LQ9 block that tore up 3 cylinders from a drop valve seat. It's a bad idea to get aboard 4065 to accept LS3 pistons. I have always been told that that the cylinder walls are not thick enough for that. That being said, I've seen guys do it and run it. I just don't know how much is there because nobody that I've ever talked to has told me, oh yeah, they're still 200 thick or they're 125 or they're 80 or whatever the number is. They all say the same thing. I don't know. We just did it and we ran it and it was fine. It makes power. Okay. I think if I was doing an NA one, I might be opt to doing that because we're going to do that on the 4.8. We're putting a 4-inch bore on the 4.8, which guys are doing that too, which I've been told you shouldn't do. What if the no boost on VTEC engines came from people being not good at tuning? That's possible. But even if you knew nothing about tuning, like you could just do air fuel or whatever, because you don't ever have to change the VTEC point. If you put a blower on there, like a Vortec or Jackson Racing or a turbo, it is going to work better when you change the VTEC onset point. But when you go to the VTEC camshaft, the bigger camshaft that makes more power NA, it's going to make more power under boost. And the thing is with a turbo, if you have the wastegate set at 10 pounds, unlike a blower, which the boost could come down when you switch into the VTEC cam, but on the turbo, it doesn't do that. It's like, oh well, now we're getting with the party. Let's ready to go. I'm going to keep making 10 pounds on this bigger cam profile, and I'm going to start making a lot more power. Do you have a preference in pistons? There's lots of good stuff. I think it would depend on what we were doing, but I've had really good luck with JE or Wiseco. Who else do we want to run? I've run the CP stuff is good. Test with standard LS3 chambers, NA and boosted, softened chambers, NA and boosted. That would be okay. That would be a lot of work to do in a car, though. Hemi dual plug heads running low timing numbers and pass emissions without DI. So there's definitely value to faster burn. Yes, and 2-stage nitrous plate, long tube headers, 3-inch exhaust, X pipe, MagnaFlows. I think of tuning it for 93 on the V6 Camaro. My son has a V6 Camaro now. I think his is I don't know, 13 or 14 or something. I don't know what you mean by thoughts. Larry Widmer with Endine website had multiple articles about his Jackson Racing Supercharger making more boost and disabling VTEC. Makes you think if he actually had a dyno. Well, he certainly, it sounds like he had at least had a boost gauge. But like I said, I've heard good things about a lot of the things that he's done. That may have been, we all make mistakes. I've done dumb stuff too. Honda stuff is educational experience. My neighborhood. Watched Steve's video again. He's talked theoretically and said reality was much different. He gave the timing on different engines with boost and race gas, not the same as NA. Steve knows what he's doing. I'm not going to try to tell Steve what he's doing. But if I doubt that he would say what people seem to think he's saying. I think he knows better than that. I think he knows more than that. And so I doubt he's saying that. But anybody that was saying that, I would disagree with that. What, if any, are the benefits of and drawbacks of running a ratchet shifter and a standard shifter on a street car? The ratchet shifter is nice because you can just click it and it goes up. It's not as cool as a Lenko or the lightning shifters. I like the lightning shifters the best, but I've never run a Lenko, but I like the lightning shifters because it has that look. So an LQ9, it will be fine. She's so fine, my LQ9. The LT is a high feature V6. Twin 45s might be laggy. Yeah, twin 45s on a V6 are not going to be the way to go. You're going to want twin GT35s, which it already could take you to 1,000 horsepower. No, I don't think you're going to go there if everything else is stock. And if it's direct injected, you're definitely going to run out of fuel. VTEC and VTEC, that's right. I'm aware it would be laggy, but it's just for fun. I like to experiment with something I'm not afraid to break. Well, you should start off with not breaking it because see how fun it is. And then later on, you could go, oh, well, you know what this thing really needs? It needs way more than 1,000 horsepower of the GT35s that are already doing well, if you manage to get enough fuel to them. Your friendly reminder to like the videos. Yeah, we got 74 and 46. Come on. The duration of a cylinder pressure is increased with pushes on piston longer. Corky Bell Supercharging book explains it. Yeah, that's what I mean by more average cylinder pressure. My brother's manual V6 Camaro is pretty fun. 2017, the 6th-gen chassis is very good with the OEM performance exhaust. It sounds pretty aggressive. People underrate the heck out of those cars. I know if you look at that V6 Camaro, the only thing is I'm sure that it's fairly heavy. I don't know what the weight is, but if you look at a 300 horsepower V8 Cobra, this has that much power. It's just a V6. And for my son, it's more than enough. It's too much car for him already. But I haven't even taken it out and wrung it out a little bit, which we're going to do. I want to see what that V6 feels like. It should be fun. I had bad luck with Wiseco, but seemed to be a lot better now. I've had an Audi 20 valve 5-cylinder, so I have two choices, J or Wiseco. So when you say you had bad luck with Wiseco, did you have a metallurgy problem or did you have a tune problem? I have an LQ4, 60 over block. I'm just starting 78 C3, so I don't want to go Gen 3. I don't understand the Lenco transmission. Each gear has its own lever. What's not to love about that? Ratchet shifter might be a pain and stop and go traffic, but I wouldn't bother. But doesn't, like, that's the one thing about the lightning rods is it has a lever that's just a normal lever, so you can just go park, reverse, neutral, drive, 1, 2, or whatever. You can just put it in drive and just drive it around. But you can also, grab gears. Plus, like I said, and those things are like money now too. Like 3 power glides. 6th gen Camaro V6 is 3,400 pounds. That's not bad. That's probably what a Cobra weighed, right? 4,100. That seems like more what I was thinking. How much horsepower do 62 millimeter twin turbos can they support on a 408? It depends on which 62s they are. They have some that that will go a lot, like 4-digit stuff. 5th gen convertible, 4,100 pounds. Let me be specific. Okay. On the Lenco, each gear having its own lever seems like a lot of room for human error. No, you should be shifting. You shouldn't have the computer do that. Richard, ever get your hands on a stock 392 Hemi? I haven't ever run one. I've never run one of those. I have run a later VVT 5.7 on the dyno, but not a 392. And I've run 6.1s and earlier 5.7s, but not a 392, not a 6.4. That friend that had a V6 Camaro RS that did every bit of 140 took a bit, but it got there. I would 300 horsepower. It should go that fast. I don't know how aero that new Camaro. It's an unfortunate rhyme. I don't know how aero it is, but that kind of power level should go that fast. 5th gen Camaros are closer to 4,000, but the 6th gens are hundreds of pounds lighter. Can't downshift a Lenco till it stops. Yeah, Lenco's a drag racing transmission. I've seen some of those things over when I was over visiting John at AccuFab. They're cool, but that's why I like the Lenco look with those lightning rods on just a turbo 350 with a shift kit or something. Fifth gen is Porky. 6th gen. When did the 6th gen start? What year is that? I have a star shifter, which will let you do either ratchet or not, versus a stock AMC floor shifter, basically an early 80s Ford floor shifter. I'd be curious to see what a 392 can do on stock internals. I feel like the internet is stupid to some degree that they claim the pistons are glass, can't handle boost. What I can tell you, Dead Broke, is they've been saying that since the introduction of the Hemi. And we've done 1,000 horsepower on the early 5.7s, which are also supposed to have glass pistons or not enough piston crown or whatever. And I think that most of those didn't have enough ring gap and didn't have enough tune. V6 Camaro, 335 horsepower. My first inline 6-cylinder Nova, 12.5 horsepower. Like 125, I mean. After reading your Honda book and the Endyne website, my first B16 Jackson Racing combo on the Dynojet indicated Larry obviously had never been on Dynojet. A lot of folks BS about disabling the VTEC. Yeah, if you disable the VTEC, that's the wrong way to go. But, if we look back, Oscar Jackson learned a lot about that stuff too. I did a lot of testing with him, and they initially were under the impression that because you had a positive displacement supercharger that you didn't need runner length and you wanted the boost to get to the valve immediately. And I'm like, no, that's not how it works. And then showed him, and the same thing with the Focus. I just ran his blower intake manifold, made a plate, made a throttle body attachment to it, and just ran it NA and said, look, here's what's happening. Look at this power curve. with this manifold. Now look at the power curve with the other manifold. Now look at the power curve with your blower and that manifold. I said, we have all the data that we need to show what happens with runner length. And I also made an adjustable manifold later on the Focus, not on the B series or the D series Honda stuff. But I said, look, this runner length does the same thing on whether it's boosted or not. I said, it doesn't matter to you because you can't fit more runner length in there with your blower, with the blower up against the firewall like it is on the Honda. I said, so it doesn't matter. You have to put what fits there, and your thing packages very nicely. I said, honestly, if you were going to do anything, I wouldn't put runner length in it. I'd put an intercooler on it, but you can't put that there either because there's just no room to package it all. So we get what we get. And because the problem is, like on the Focus and on the Honda, is that because of the lack of runner length with that manifold, you lose power through a fairly good part of the curve. So the blower is like you make less power, and then the blower is having to catch up just to the NA power and then make more, which it does, but with the standard kits on stuff on 5 or 6 pounds or whatever, there wasn't really big gains, especially down low. There were better gains actually up top, despite the fact that it was a positive displacement blower on those applications. You should have the computer doing that. Be a better tuner. Mostly kidding. Manual shift autos are cool. No, I agree. If you're going drag racing and you can have the computer do it perfectly every time, then you should do that. But you should also shift because it's fun to shift for yourself. So Southern California, they're closing down off the drag racing tracks. So they closed down, I think Irwindale is one that I heard about. Cool thing about the modern Lenco, you can add as many gears as you want. My friend says he has 2 extra 62 millimeter turbos. Look at the possibility of mounting them on the end of my headers. Put on an intercooler inside the van through the doghouse. I think you could get there. I think it would make a lot more power than you have now. Wikipedia says the 6th gen started in 2016. And I need to go look and see what the difference is between the 5th and 6th gen. In my mind, those are the same car, but maybe I haven't looked at them enough. A trick titanium blow-proof bell housing must be purchased. That is $5,000 just for the bell housing. Yeah. I think we need to make the Skyrim intake with runners so long that the top of the manifold would catch on overpasses as you drive under. Well, I want to go up and then come back down. We'll put U-bends at the top, and then we could come back down. Length is tuned in engineering. Would a 600 horsepower supercharged combo be more likely to detonate than a 500 horsepower combo, both with the same boost? No. So the people that said no, you're thinking that the boost determines the detonation threshold of a 94 F-150 5-liter. Would its motor still be considered Mustang? Your F-150 is not going to have Mustang cams in it. It also doesn't have Mustang intake manifold on it. I don't think it has the same static compression, maybe either. But yes, it is a 302. 5th and 6th gen F bodies are 2 completely different chassis. The 6th gen has the same chassis as the Cadillac. Okay. Do they look the same on the outside? Are they visually different? Are they visualizing? I want to make a huge runner spacer on a stock 2-piece manifold, similar to the spacer Honda used on some of the J series. Okay. Like also, we did that on the 5-liter stuff too. We made them out of phenolic back then, but you could make them out of anything. Is turbo boost at 14 pounds easier on the bottom end than 350 shot of nitrous? Yes, I would argue that it is. And I would argue that you could make a lot more power safely with boost than you can with nitrous. Would it be worth it to build a 302 or 351 Windsor? Yes, on a 351 Windsor. 16 to 18 Camaros look visually similar to 13 to 15 Camaros in the front. Okay, but the chassis is different. Okay, so I thought, I don't remember looking, because we were looking at Camaros for my son, and we went out and looked at a bunch of them, and I kind of thought that they looked similar, and I'm a car guy, so, but I thought that they were strikingly similar. You know, they're a little bit different here on the lights and stuff, but have you ever heard of secondary restrictors on AFB style carb? I don't have a lot of experience with the AFB. So are they stopping the blades from opening or something? 6-speed has 6-gen has a better transmission, lighter weight, wider body, lighter suspension. 19 plus Camaros get facelifted pretty significantly. Okay. Yeah, his isn't that new. Trick Titanium makes a Pontiac V8 blow-proof bell housing in titanium. Titanium would be cool, but it's not cheap. But you could say, hey, look, this was made out of surplus Russian MiGs. We're going to close out our poll at 55% saying no. They think that it's like 54, 46. 54, 46. It's in Spam-A-Lot. Test your luck. How about no? That would be a negative. And we're streaming and streaming and streaming. And on that note, it is time to go. I'll see you guys all tomorrow morning, as usual.